The quiet act that no one saw coming the evening was cold, and the city was alive with rushing cars, flashing lights, and people moving fast. No one seemed to notice the man sitting quietly on the side of the street. His clothes were worn, his shoes broken, and his hands trembling as he held a small piece of cardboard that simply read, "Please help. I have not eaten for 2 days." Keanu Reeves was walking back from a late meeting. He was tired, his jacket pulled close to protect himself from the chilly wind. Most people who passed by the man only gave a quick glance before moving on. Some looked away, pretending they had not seen him. Others tightened their grip on their wallets, as if kindness would cost too much. But Keanu stopped. His steps slowed. Something inside him refused to let him walk past. He had known hunger once, years ago, long before his name was known around the world. He remembered the pain in the stomach, the silence of empty pockets, the helplessness of waiting for someone to notice. The man on the ground lifted his eyes, and there was no anger in them, only sadness. "Sir, please, just a little food," the man whispered. Keanu reached into his pocket. He felt nothing but a single folded dollar. He had given away most of what he carried earlier in the day to buy coffee for a group of workers he met by chance. Now, only one note remained. It would have been easy to walk away. $1 meant nothing to him compared to his life's earnings. But in that moment, it was all he had. He pulled it out slowly, looked at the note, and thought of how small it was. Still, it could buy the man a piece of bread, maybe a little water, maybe enough hope to last a few more hours. Without hesitation, Keanu bent down, placed the dollar into the man's shaking hand, and said softly, "It's not much, but it's what I have right now. Please use it to eat." The man's lips trembled. He held the dollar as if it were gold, his eyes filled with tears that glistened under the streetlight. He tried to speak, but his voice broke. Keanu smiled gently, touched his shoulder, and stood up again. He didn't stay for thanks. He didn't wait for attention. He simply walked away, blending back into the flow of strangers. What Keanu did not know was that just a few steps away, Ana de Armas had witnessed everything. She had been leaving a small cafe nearby, holding a warm drink in her hands. She saw the way Keanu bent down, how his voice was soft, how his hand shook slightly as he gave the last dollar he had in his pocket. Anna's heart tightened. She had known Keanu for years, not just as a famous actor, but as a man of deep humility. Yet seeing him give the very last thing he carried, not for praise or recognition but out of pure kindness, broke something inside her. Her eyes filled with tears. She whispered to herself, "How many people would do that when no one was looking?" The city lights flickered, horns echoed in the distance, but for Anna, the world felt silent. Her drink grew cold in her hand as she watched Keanu walk into the night, unaware that someone had seen the quiet sacrifice he made. As she stood there frozen, memories of her own struggles came rushing back, days when she too had no money, no food, no place to rest. She remembered the hopelessness and how a stranger's small act of kindness once gave her strength to keep going. Now she had seen that same kindness in him. Anna wiped her tears quickly, afraid someone might notice. But deep inside, she knew this moment was going to stay with her forever. She whispered again, "That $1 is worth more than millions." And as Keanu disappeared into the crowd, she began to follow, not because she wanted to speak, but because she wanted to understand more. She wanted to know how someone who had seen so much pain in life still chose to give, even when he had almost nothing in his hand. This was only the beginning of a story that would test their strength, their kindness, and their faith in humanity. Shadows of the past. Anna followed Keanu at a distance, her steps quiet against the city pavement. The night air was sharp, and the lamps above cast long shadows across the street. She did not know why she was following him, only that her heart would not let her turn away. Keanu walked with no hurry. His hands were in his pockets, his head slightly bent forward as if deep in thought. The man he had helped was already lost in the crowd behind them, holding tightly to the single-dollar note like it was a piece of life itself. Anna thought about speaking, about calling his name, but something inside her held her back. She wanted to see him as he was when no one else was around, without lights, without cameras, without the world watching. Soon, Keanu stopped at a small shop. It was one of those places that never closed, a corner store with a flickering sign. Anna waited outside, pretending to look at her phone as Keanu walked in. He did not buy anything for himself. Instead, she watched through the glass as he pointed at a bag of bread, some fruit, and a bottle of water. He paid quietly, holding the items close to his chest, then stepped back outside. But instead of walking home, he turned around and went back the way he came. Anna's breath caught. She understood. He was going back to the man he had just helped. She followed him again, her heart heavier with each step. Sure enough, Keanu found the man still sitting on the ground, shivering as the night grew colder. He placed the bag in front of him, crouched down, and said in a calm voice, "This should last you a little longer. Take care of yourself, brother." The man could not stop crying. He opened the bag with shaking fingers, pulling out the bread and holding it like treasure. Why are you doing this?" he asked through tears. Keanu smiled, his voice low and steady. "Because once, someone did the same for me. I was in a place like this, and I thought no one cared. Then a stranger gave me a meal. It was not the food alone that saved me. It was the feeling that I was not invisible. I never forgot that." Anna felt her chest tighten. She had never heard him speak like this. The world saw him as a strong man, a star, someone who lived far above ordinary struggles. But here he was, kneeling in the cold night, telling a stranger about a wound from his past. The man whispered, "You don't even know me." Keanu touched his shoulder gently. "I don't need to. Pain is the same for everyone. Hunger, loneliness, fear, they don't care about names. Kindness shouldn't care either." Anna could not hold her tears any longer. They rolled down her cheeks freely now. She turned her face away so no one could see, but her body trembled with the weight of emotion. The city noise went on around them, but in that small circle of light under the street lamp, there was silence. Just two men bound by something greater than words, and one woman standing nearby, shaken to her soul. Keanu finally stood up, gave the man a small nod, and walked away again. This time, Anna did not follow from the shadows. She gathered her courage, stepped forward, and called softly, "Keanu?" He turned, surprised to see her there. His eyes widened slightly, then softened when he recognized her. "Anna, what are you doing here?" She hesitated, her hands trembling, her voice quiet. "I saw what you did. I saw everything." For a moment, Keanu looked almost embarrassed. He shifted uncomfortably, as if he had been caught in something private. "It was nothing," he said quickly. "Just a small thing." Anna shook her head, her eyes glistening. "No, it was not small. It was the biggest thing I've seen in a long time." The weight of her words hung between them. Keanu looked down at the pavement, then back up at her, his face calm, but his eyes heavy with meaning. "People are hurting everywhere, Anna. If we don't do the little we can, then what are we really worth?" She stepped closer, her voice breaking as she whispered, "And that's why my eyes are full of tears right now. Because you gave your last dollar, and you still went back to give more. Who does that?" Keanu looked at her for a long moment. Then, with a small smile that carried both pain and peace, he said, "Someone who remembers what it's like to have nothing." Anna lowered her gaze, wiping her tears quickly. In that moment, She realized this night was going to change her forever. She had seen many people with wealth and fame, but she had never seen someone carry humility like this. As they stood in silence, the wind grew colder, and the streets around them grew emptier. Neither of them knew that this simple act of kindness was only the start of something much greater, something that would test their hearts in ways they could not yet imagine. A heavy silence. The streets grew quieter as the night deepened. Anna and Keanu walked side by side now. The air between them was heavy, filled with words neither of them could find. Keanu's steps were steady, his face calm, but Anna's heart was racing. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. Keanu, why do you always hide this side of yourself? The world should know what you did tonight. Keanu stopped walking. His eyes turned to hers, filled with a quiet sadness. Anna, if the world sees, then it becomes performance. Kindness loses its truth when it's done for the crowd. What matters is when no one is watching. His words struck her deeply. She lowered her gaze, ashamed of how many times she had done good only when someone else could notice. They walked again, the cold wind pushing against their faces. Then suddenly a sound broke the silence. From across the street came a sharp voice, harsh and angry. Hey! You gave money to that beggar? Don't you know people like him waste it? A man stepped out from the shadows, his face twisted with scorn. He had been watching. His voice carried bitterness, almost mocking. You think you're some saint, huh? Giving away your last dollar. What a joke. Anna tensed, her body stiff with shock. Keanu, however, stood still and calm. His eyes met the stranger's and he said quietly, What he does with it is his choice. What I do with it is mine. The man laughed harshly. You're a fool. People like him don't change. You wasted your money. You wasted your time. Anna's fists clenched. She wanted to shout at the man, to tell him he was wrong, but Keanu's hand lifted slightly as if to stop her. His voice remained steady, almost gentle. Maybe you're right. Maybe he won't change. But maybe, for one night he feels less alone. Maybe that's enough. The man sneered, muttered something under his breath, and walked away into the dark. Anna turned to Keanu, her eyes wide. How can you stay so calm when people speak like that? Keanu sighed. Because anger doesn't heal anything. I've seen enough hate in my life. I don't want to add more to it. They kept walking, but the moment stayed with Anna. She could not stop replaying his words in her mind. Every answer he gave carried the weight of someone who had lived through pain and learned from it, not someone who simply read it in books or heard it from others. After some time, they reached a small park. The benches were empty, the trees bare from winter. They sat down, the city sounds faint in the distance. Anna finally asked the question that had been burning inside her. Keanu, you said someone once gave you a meal when you had nothing. Can you tell me about that? Keanu leaned back, his eyes lifting toward the sky where faint stars were peeking through the city haze. He was silent for a long moment before he spoke. I was young, maybe 20, maybe less. I was in a city far from home. I had nothing, no money, no place to stay, no family around. I remember walking the streets, hungry, cold, thinking maybe no one would care if I disappeared. Then one night, an old woman who ran a food stand called me over. She handed me a bowl of soup. I told her I couldn't pay. She smiled and said, Not everything in this world has a price. That one meal, it felt like light in the middle of darkness. It kept me alive, not just my body, but my hope. Anna's throat tightened. Her eyes filled with tears again. She could see the memory etched in his face, the way his voice carried both gratitude and sorrow. And since then, he continued. I promised myself, if I ever had enough, I'd give back. Maybe I can't save the world, but I can be the reason someone feels less invisible. Anna's tears slipped down her cheeks freely. She whispered, You kept that promise. Tonight proved it. Keanu looked at her gently. We all have promises inside us, Anna. The question is, do we keep them when it costs us something? The words echoed in her heart. She thought of her own life, her own struggles, her own moments of silence when she could have spoken, of times when she could have helped but walked away instead. Shame and hope mixed inside her, a storm she could not name. But before she could reply, the sound of footsteps approached. A group of young men entered the park, their laughter loud, their movements rough. They noticed Keanu and Anna sitting together, and one of them smirked. Well, look who it is, one of them said, his tone mocking. The great Keanu Reeves, sitting on a bench in the dark, acting like a poor man. Where's your fancy car? Where's your $1,000,000 smile? Anna's heart pounded. She could feel trouble rising. Keanu remained calm, but his eyes sharpened. Leave us be, he said firmly. The men laughed louder, circling closer. One of them pointed at Anna. And who's this? His girlfriend? Maybe she likes playing hero too. Fear rushed through Anna, but she saw Keanu's hand clench into a fist for the first time that night. His calm had limits, and this moment was testing them. The test of courage. The group of men circled closer, their voices sharp and mocking. The cold night air felt even heavier now, filled with a sense of danger. Anna's heart raced as she sat frozen on the bench. She glanced at Keanu, hoping to see fear in his eyes so she would not feel so weak. But instead, his face was calm, his jaw tight, his eyes steady. Leave us alone, Keanu said again, his voice low but firm. The leader of the group smirked and stepped forward. Or what? You'll fight us? You may know how to act tough on screen, but this is real life. The other men laughed, pushing each other as if enjoying a cruel game. One of them pointed at Keanu's bag of groceries, the one he had bought for the homeless man earlier. Look at this. Giving food to beggars. What a hero. Maybe we should take it for ourselves. Anna's breath caught. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them to stop, but her voice was locked inside her chest. Keanu stood up slowly, his height casting a shadow over them. He didn't raise his fists, he didn't shout. He simply stepped between Anna and the men, his body forming a shield. You don't want to do this, he said, his voice steady, almost gentle. The leader sneered. And why not? Keanu's eyes narrowed. Because hurting others never fills the emptiness inside you. It only makes it deeper. For a moment, silence fell. The words cut through the night like a blade. Anna saw something flicker in the men's eyes, confusion, maybe even recognition, but pride made them laugh louder instead. The leader shoved Keanu's shoulder roughly. You think words will stop us? Keanu didn't move back. He stood firm. His eyes held no anger, only strength. No, but maybe respect will. I won't fight you. I won't harm you. But I will stand here all night if I have to. The tension was sharp enough to break the air. One of the younger men muttered, Come on, this isn't worth it. Let's go. But the leader glared at him. Shut up. He turned back to Keanu, his eyes blazing. You think you're better than us? Anna couldn't take it anymore. She stood up, her voice shaking but clear. No, he doesn't think he's better. He just refuses to be like you. The group turned toward her, surprised by her courage. Her hands were trembling, but she held her ground. You laugh at kindness because you're afraid of it. But deep inside, you know you need it more than anyone. The words hung in the air. The laughter faded. The leader's jaw tightened, his fists clenched, but something in his eyes shifted. Keanu placed a gentle hand on Anna's arm, guiding her back. Then he faced the men again. You can walk away tonight, or you can do something you'll regret tomorrow. The choice is yours. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, one by one, the men turned away. The leader lingered for a moment, his pride refusing to let go. But at last he spat on the ground and muttered, "This isn't over," before storming off with the rest. The park grew quiet again. Anna collapsed back onto the bench, her knees weak. Keanu sat beside her, his breathing steady though his hands were still tense. "You didn't fight," Anna whispered, her voice trembling. Keanu shook his head. "Violence creates more violence. I've seen enough of that in this world. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not fight." Anna looked at him, her eyes filled with both relief and admiration. "You were ready to take the hit, weren't you? To protect me?" He nodded softly. "Yes. If it meant you'd be safe." Her tears returned, flowing freely now. "Why do you carry so much pain for others, Keanu? Doesn't it break you?" His gaze lowered, his voice heavy. "It does. But it also heals me. Every time I help someone, every time I stand for someone, I remember that I'm still alive for a reason." Anna's heart ached. She wanted to say something, but the weight of his words was too strong. Instead, she simply leaned closer, resting her head gently on his shoulder. For a moment, there was peace. The danger was gone. The night was quiet again. But deep inside, Anna knew this was only the beginning. She could feel it in her bones. Life was about to test them even harder. Keanu looked at the stars above, his voice soft as he whispered, "Sometimes the darkest nights bring the brightest lessons." Anna closed her eyes, whispering back, "Then maybe tonight was a lesson for both of us." The unseen burden the next morning came with soft sunlight breaking through gray clouds. The city was awake again, loud and restless, but inside Anna's heart, silence remained. She had barely slept. The images of the night before kept returning. The homeless man holding the dollar like treasure. Keanu standing firm against the men in the park, his quiet strength shielding her from harm. Anna sat by her window, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. She thought of Keanu's words, about promises, about kindness done when no one was watching. Every sentence replayed in her mind like an echo. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Keanu. "Are you free today? I want to show you something." Her heart skipped. She typed back quickly, "Yes. Where should I meet you?" A few hours later, they stood outside a small building on the edge of the city. The walls were old, the paint peeling, but the windows glowed with warmth. Laughter and chatter came from inside. Anna looked at the faded sign above the door. It read, "Shelter of Hope." "What is this place?" Anna asked softly. Keanu smiled gently. "A place where I spend most of my time when no one notices. I don't come here as an actor. I come here as a man who remembers what it feels like to be forgotten." He pushed open the door, and Anna stepped inside. The smell of food filled the air. Children ran around with bright smiles. Tired men and women sat at tables, eating, their faces slowly softening from years of hardship. Volunteers moved about, carrying plates, handing out blankets, listening to stories. Anna's throat tightened. She could hardly speak. "You run this place?" she whispered. Keanu shook his head. "No, I only help. The people here run it. I just give what I can. Money, time, sometimes just listening." As they walked further in, an older woman approached. Her eyes lit up when she saw Keanu. "You came back," she said warmly, hugging him. "Always," Keanu replied softly. The woman glanced at Anna, her smile kind. "And who is this?" Anna blushed. unsure what to say. Keanu answered for her. A friend. Someone who needs to see what kindness looks like when it grows. Anna's eyes filled with tears. She watched as Keanu bent down to talk with a child holding a broken toy, listened patiently to a man explaining his search for work, and sat beside a tired woman asking if she needed medicine. There was no distance between him and them, no barrier of fame or wealth. He belonged to them, and they belonged to him. Anna finally pulled him aside. Keanu, why didn't you ever tell anyone about this? The world should see this. They should know. Keanu's expression grew heavy. Anna, do you know what happens when the world sees? They turn it into headlines, into applause, into something to consume. But these people don't need headlines. They need dignity. If my name is attached, the cameras will come. They don't need cameras. They need peace. Anna covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. But as the day went on, she noticed something else. Beneath his smile, beneath his calm, Keanu's body carried a quiet exhaustion. His shoulders slumped when no one was looking. His hands trembled when he thought no one noticed. That night, as they left the shelter, Anna finally asked, Keanu, how long have you been doing this? Years, he said softly. Every time I earn something, I try to give. Sometimes too much. She frowned. Too much? What do you mean? He stopped walking. The streetlights above cast shadows on his tired face. Anna, last night, when I gave that man my last $1, it really was my last. Not just for the day. I've been giving so much, helping so much, that sometimes I forget about myself. People think I have endless wealth, endless strength. But the truth is, I don't. Anna's chest tightened. She whispered, You're carrying everyone's pain, but who carries yours? Keanu looked at her, his eyes dark with unspoken sorrow. No one. I don't let them. Anna's tears spilled again. She wanted to hold him, to tell him he didn't have to suffer in silence, but before she could speak, his phone rang. He answered quickly, his face growing serious. Yes? I'll be there. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. What happened? Anna asked, worried. Keanu sighed. Someone from the shelter. A young boy. He's gone missing. Anna's breath caught. Missing? He nodded, his eyes hard with determination. Yes, and we have to find him before it's too late. The race against time. The night air was sharp again, carrying the weight of urgency. Keanu and Anna hurried through the city streets, their footsteps quick, their hearts heavy. The missing boy's name was Samuel. He was only 12 years old, a quiet child who had come to the shelter with his mother weeks ago. Life had been cruel to him, yet his eyes still carried a spark of hope. Where would he go? Anna asked breathlessly as they turned a corner. Keanu's voice was steady, but low. When children disappear like this, it's often because they feel forgotten. Maybe he went back to the places that remind him of before the shelter. They searched through narrow alleys, bus stops, and empty playgrounds. Each place felt colder than the last. Hours passed, and fear grew inside Anna's chest like a heavy stone. Then, near the old train station, they saw him. Samuel was sitting on the steps, his arms wrapped around his knees, his small body shaking in the cold. Samuel! Anna cried, running forward. The boy looked up, startled. His eyes were red from tears. Keanu knelt down beside him, speaking softly. Hey, brother, we've been looking everywhere for you. Samuel shook his head. I don't belong anywhere. Everyone leaves. My dad left. People at school laughed at me. Even here at the shelter, I feel like a shadow. Keanu's eyes filled with quiet pain. He placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. Listen to me, Samuel. I know that feeling. I know what it's like to believe you are invisible. But you are not invisible. Not to me. Not to Anna. Not to your mother. You matter. Do you hear me? You matter. Samuel's lips trembled. But why do you care? You don't even know me. Keanu's voice grew firm, filled with emotion. Because someone once cared for me when I thought no one would. Because I promised myself I would never let another soul feel the way I once felt. Because kindness doesn't ask for names. It simply gives. Anna's eyes blurred with tears. She knelt down too, wrapping her arm gently around the boy. Samuel, you are not alone. You never were. Sometimes pain makes us believe lies, but the truth is, you are loved. The boy's tears broke free. He buried his face into Keanu's chest, sobbing deeply. Keanu held him tightly, rocking him gently like a father would. After a long silence, the boy whispered, Will you really not leave me? Keanu's voice cracked slightly, but he answered firmly, Never. Not as long as I live. The three of them sat there in the cold night, bound together by tears, by pain, and by a fragile but powerful hope. When they returned to the shelter, the people inside rushed to greet Samuel, his mother crying as she held him close. The warmth of the room felt brighter than before, as if kindness itself had filled every corner. Anna stood by the door, watching as Keanu knelt again, this time to speak with the boy's mother. She realized then that his strength was not in his fame, not in his name, but in his endless ability to give, even when he had nothing left. Later, outside under the stars, Anna finally spoke the words she had been holding back. Keanu, tonight I saw something greater than anything I've ever known. You didn't just save Samuel's life. You saved mine, too. You showed me what it means to live for more than yourself. Keanu looked at her quietly, his eyes gentle. Anna, I'm no savior. I'm just a man trying to keep a promise. But if my life can bring even a little light, then every tear, every burden, every sacrifice, it's worth it. Her eyes filled again. She whispered, Your last dollar. It wasn't just money. It was hope. It was proof that even in a world full of shadows, one act of kindness can start a fire no darkness can put out. Keanu smiled softly, his tired eyes shining with quiet peace. Then let's keep that fire alive, together. Anna nodded, her tears falling freely. In that moment, she knew this was not just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a purpose. The city lights glowed in the distance, but for them, the brightest light came not from lamps or stars, but from the simple truth that kindness, even the smallest kind, could change everything.